We had a polling session. Some of you answered. It was very interesting. We're using the same tool. And it's a little bit hard to see from back there, but we have some top priorities. The digital transformation of business. Thanks very much for your answers, by the way, for those that tried. This is no longer active, but digital transformation of business, ideas for the future of Greece, a very simple topic. The future of Europe, also a very simple topic. And big data and the future of business intelligence. So we have some of those topics we'll pick up today. The way we're going throughout the day, until midnight, not midnight, until 7, it's following a funnel model, okay? So in the beginning, we're going through top-level issues, so-called megatrends, things that are larger, and then descending into action items. So the first point is a few thoughts on Greece and Europe, because that was obviously a priority. I am not an expert on Greece, as you can see, so I will venture out a little bit here. Definitive future scenarios, and some people call the scenario hard futures. Okay, hard futures means these are obvious trends that are definitely going to happen. And my work is not like Alvin Toffler or Ray Kurzweil, 20 years from now. My work is 5 years. So basically all of you would know exactly what happens in 5 years if you took the time, full time, to look at it. All of you could do this. Right? So you can try a future job to be a futurist. The third one at the very end, we're going to talk about action items and takeaways. So you can go home. I'm happy if you take 2 things with you, hopefully 2 inspirations, realizations about what you can be doing in your current job or your current role in your company. So first point, Europe and Greece. So this is a very difficult moment. I said this earlier, right? I believe, however, Greece will stay in the European Union. I've done a lot of research on this for the last half year, also on parallel cases like Spain. Regardless of what plays out, this is my prediction in whatever shape or form that may be. The second point is that we are at the lowest possible point right now. And I'll show you some statistics. Of course, statistics are not inclusive of that really, but that's my feeling. I think it's up from here. How quick? We'll see. Third point is the monetary union of the euro will eventually turn into a fiscal union, a real money union, and that will eventually become United States of Europe. Some of you may find that threatening. I do. I mean, I live in Switzerland. Right? Switzerland is not officially part of Europe. I'm actually from Germany originally, a country that wants to acquire leadership of that, of course. But now I live in Switzerland, which is a neutral country, and Switzerland has exactly the same problem. We want to participate, but we don't really want to go into it too much so that we lose independence. Right? I have a Swiss passport, a German passport, and an American passport, so I don't know which one to choose for this discussion. But I think ultimately the United States of Europe is what we're going to see probably in 10 to 15 years. And that is going to be a change, I think, that is largely political. The fourth point, in my view, I've looked at all the things that have been said about the future of Greece, and I cannot find a plan for 2020. What is the plan for 2020? And the previous government didn't bother with that. The current government is in a crisis, so where is the plan for 2020? I mean, this is a crucial question. We can discuss later. Okay, 2 basic principles that are hard futures. Okay? One is interdependence. Right? We're not moving into a world that is becoming more independent. The business model of Switzerland, where I live now, is independence, right? Is doomed. In a world that's digitally connected, that's globalized, that's instant, real-time, digital money, new jobs, automation, the Internet of Things, 50 things, right? You cannot be independent entirely in a world that is completely connected. How would you do that? There's only one company left that has a strong empire with their own walled garden, and that is Apple. Right? Do you know any other company that's completely self-sufficient? I mean, Tesla, I'll show you some examples, is completely a connected company. Interdependence is our future. We may not enjoy this because interdependence means that we're depending on others. There's an ecosystem. When you look back only 10 years ago, and in many ways we have a little bit of that on the internet now, we had so-called ecosystems. Large companies like Microsoft used to be. It's a big change now, right? I know there's somebody from Microsoft here, so it's kind of interesting to observe this. Right? So we're going from the ecosystem to the ecosystem, and that's basically, I'll show you some example of what's happened there. The second point is Metcalfe's law. Right? The utility of a network is proportional to the number of users. In other words, the larger you are, the more connected you are, the more scale and network effect you have in terms of economics. So to solve global problems or European problems like energy, food, water, terrorism, cybersecurity, that's not going to happen with one country or two countries. This is a collective issue. We need the network effect. Do you know how much money could be saved if there was a pan-European military? I mean, we could pay for any and all educational and retirement issues by reducing the military to pan-European. And that is a discussion that's being had at this moment. Right? So lots of political issues here, of course, in this, but this is 2 points I want to throw in. We're moving into a world that is interdependent. In other words, you can be a big wheel, but you can't be the brain. Right? You can be a large player, but you're always connected with other players. And we're seeing this now even with China. China wants to be a global player, but on the other hand, a lot of people are worried about doing stuff with China. So now they have to open up. They have to do things that weren't previously thinking about. Right? It's basically this ecosystem of companies and people, and it's all digitally connected. I mean, it's amazing to see how fast things are changing on a global basis. Did you know how long it takes some companies now, like Dropbox and other startups, to reach a $1 billion valuation? That used to take a few years. Now it's 8 months. Right? 8 months. Chinese and American companies. So it's mind-boggling what's happening in the global economy in this digital world. And then there is also an interesting part of Europe, I think, that is very hopeful, is we're in a very unique position because we don't just adore technology. I mean, I lived in America for 17 years, and the spirit in America is, of course, a pioneering spirit. It's the spirit of trying anything. And that's very good. Don't say that's a bad thing. But it can be extremely taxing. Right? If you work in America, you have 1 week of vacation. And most of the time, you can't take it. So we're in a unique position to actually balance humanity and technology, which is the future. The future is not going to be a world based on just technology. Because that world would be a robot. Well, I'll show you some examples. So what we're seeing here is basically the American belief in technology has sometimes been referred to as the California ideology. In other words, that every problem can be solved with technology. And I don't know if you believe this, but this is the belief of Silicon Valley. Right? Energy problem, geoengineering, asteroid mining, it's all technology. There's almost no political problem or social problem. And then, of course, we have this belief, this is a book that came out 2 years ago, right? How the internet will solve every single problem in society. Ignorance, disease, poverty, hunger, war, probably sex as well, right? Whatever. Right? It will end all of these things. And that is exciting stuff. I'm not saying that's bad, that's just a question of culture. Right? What we have in Europe is this, right? We're thinking of people, of relationships, of traditions, of ethics. I mean, we're thinking of things that are a little bit beyond machines. And that makes us very slow. Right? It's just part of what we are, especially in Greece, of course, given the philosophers, right? Thinking about larger stories, context. So let me ask you a question. In 15 years, by 2030, which continent will become the place where these things are heading together, right? I mean, China is very much like America, is technology-driven now. Right? So Europe has a good position in that balance in terms of philosophy. So this is now the screensaver for my iPhone. Right? When I open my iPhone, I get this. I get this icon. You can download this, by the way. Just put in that name. And so because today, as you know, the mobile phones have become our second brain. In fact, if you ask kids between 12 and 18 in many Western countries, who is your best friend, you know what they say? The phone. Right? That's pathetic. Right? Now, it's true, though. Right? So this is definitely becoming something. What we have to figure out is a balance between those two. The future of what we do is not going to be to use the screen more often, right? To use smarter technology. That is definitely a part of what we have to do, of course. Right? But it's a question of balance. So here's a question I have for you. What is Greece going to be in 2020? I mean, if I ask you right now, what is the biggest growth area in Greek business the next 5 years? What is it? Well, tourism? I don't know. This is a key question. We have to decide. We have to look at this. And so it's a great quote by Rahm Emanuel, who says that you never let a serious crisis go to waste. And that's what we have now. I mean, we have a serious crisis. I think there is good outcome from this by being able to take larger risk. Now, I look at these statistics now from Statista about Greece, 2 weeks old. Right? You may have seen similar things. They may be outdated. I have no way of judging this. I'll leave that to you. But Statista says right now, in terms of unemployment, right, the peak is behind us. Right? They're actually very optimistic as far as unemployment goes. What stats they're based on, I have no idea. You have to help me to see if that works out. GDP, right? Right? The shrinking of GDP, big problem. And we're also right now at the lowest possible point. Right? Who believes this? Can I see who believes this is true? Yeah, it's okay. You can say yes or no, or you can send a comment. Nobody believes it's true. Oh, God. Okay, well, there's one person. Okay, you're probably not Greek then. We'll go back to that in a second. I just wanted to provoke you a little bit. But I think it's possible. I mean, what we're seeing, look at Spain, right? I mean, Spain is a great example of what happened just the last 6 months. Right? Employment has come back. Investment has come back. And Spain was also at a very low point. It's not impossible. So I'm going to give you some hope here on this. The reality is also, of course, that we're living in a world that is undeniable this, right? Doesn't matter whether you live in Greece or in Greece or South Africa or the US, right? The world is now extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This is a military term called VUCA. Right? So every soldier in the army has to train for the uncertainty, for all the complexity, right? And that is our future. That is the future just because speed of technology is increasing our lives so much. I mean, it's like going down the freeway at 400 kilometers an hour. You have to have more foresight. The average lifespan of an S&P 500 company has shrunk to 15 years. Projections have in 2020 it'll be 8 years, the average lifetime of a S&P 500 company. So that is kind of a future, I think, that is probably undeniable. So, but I want to turn this around and say, what if we looked at this with a different abbreviation? Right? Can we think of how would we fight this? And I've done lots of seminars with companies who are threatened, banks, insurance companies, record labels. My background was in the music business. Right? Publishers, magazines. One is speed, right? Velocity. The other one is unorthodoxy. Unusual activities, right? For example, unorthodox idea, Airbnb, Uber, the taxi company, yeah? Coming through the back door, right? Thinking of the opposite of what you would usually do. I mean, I promise you, if you can go home and you can look at your company, whether you make elevators or machines or software, and you say, what could I do that would be the reverse of what the other guys are doing? Right? One company that does great in this is Amazon. Speed, of course, clearly. But what Amazon does, Amazon says, okay, our primary principle of life is customer delight. Right? Loving the customer. And Jeff Bezos, when he started with a movie service, you can watch movies on Amazon, he went through a whole negotiation with the studios. He got 50,000 movies licensed. And when he launched the movie service, he went to 70 million customers around the world, mostly US though, and he said, now I will give you 50,000 HD streaming movies for free because you are a premium customer and we'll give you a present. Right? He did not go to them and said, now you can give me $10 for a movie. Right? He went there and said, you can stream for free because we have the license and you're a customer, give you a present. Right? Unorthodoxy. Collaboration. The key point in the future is not competition. That is an old discussion. Right? It's collaboration. And it's actually hyper-collaboration, working together rather than competing. This would be definitely a key term here. This term is, I couldn't find a better word, it's very American, right? Awesomeness. I don't even know what that means in Greek or any other language, but it's to be awesome, right? To have a great new idea that really changes things. We'll leave that out for a second because that's a little bit wishy-washy. But can we turn this around? Can we turn VUCA around? Right? What would a digitally transformed Greece look like? I mean, I guarantee you in 5 years, every single place in Greece will be connected at high speed, mobile. Right now, that's not so good, I see, but it could be better. I've seen worse, but I've seen better, as we can see right here, the internet struggles we're having here. But what would this look like if you move up here? Eh? I mean, that's your mission to find that out, because that is what's going to happen. We're not going to go backwards on technology, we're only going forward. What would your business look like when it's finally digital? I mean, I worked in the music business as a musician and producer and record producer in the US. And then I went on the internet in the 90s. And I started a company like Spotify. You guys know Spotify, maybe? Yes. I started that in the late 90s. It was way too early. And I went bankrupt with that, but because it was too early. But today, the music business is in the cloud. Right? I mean, if you give a CD or a DVD to your children for Christmas, they will call a therapist. Right? They think you've gone crazy or been drinking. I mean, does anybody buy CDs here? Right? I mean, yes, if you're above 50, you say, oh, yeah, I do. But, come on, in 5 years, we won't have any CDs. We have books, right? Books we'll keep for the reason of the brain, right? Reading with the brain. But CDs, DVDs, I mean, nobody will know what a CD is in 5 years. Right? So, I mean, when I worked in the music business and we talked about the internet, they were down here and they were saying, this is all nice with the internet, but we don't really want people to have this power. Right? We don't want people to listen to what they want to listen to so easily at a lower price. We'll do anything we can to keep that from happening. And the music industry sued 257,000 people were taken to court for downloading illegally. One of them went to trial. All the other money was made by the lawyers, right? And the music industry, sorry lawyers, but that's good for lawyers, I suppose. The music industry lost 71% of revenue in 10 years. So transformation is a tough topic. Gary Hamel, who wrote a great book about this, he says the single biggest reason companies fail is that they overinvest in what is as opposed to what might be. And this is, of course, very American, right? I mean, in Germany, where I was born, perfection is everything. Right? It's perfection above anything. And in Switzerland, where I live now, is to have the least possible risk. Right? In America, it's about speed. Right? And looking ahead. It's just a cultural thing. But we have to learn this. We have to think about what might be. What might be in Greece in 2020? That's the mission today. What might that be in 2020? Your own job, your company's job? That's a key question. So let's discover the future, and then we'll go back to the work at hand later and summarize some of these topics. First of all, exponentiality. Right? You've seen this curve. Most people don't know what that means. Well, it means basically that our future and our present is no longer a linear growth. It is no longer this part of the curve where nothing really changed very much here. I mean, if you double 0.001, you get 0.02. It's not very much, right? But when you double 2, you get to 4. When you double 4, you get to 8, and so on, right? An exponential curve of technology. Moore's law, every 18 months, processors get twice as cheap and as good as the year before. So you have exponential growth every year. If the car industry had grown exponentially like the computer business, you would fill up the car once in a lifetime. You put gas in once. That would be it. But the computer industry has grown like this, technology. So now we're at the point, and this is the really important message for you guys, right? We're not here. We're not up there. We're exactly here. Right? We're at the takeoff point. We're going from 4 to 8, not 4 to 5. We will have a download of the slides later on, by the way, if you want to take notes, because there's a lot of material here. So basically here, this is exponential. This is what we have to get used to. In 18 months, our technology and our development will be twice as much as it is today, and then twice of that, 16, right, in 32 months. So looking at this, it's basically quite clear. We have to think exponentially, right? And this will hit you now when I first read this by a colleague. You know? It's so true. Humanity will change more in the next 20 years than recent, not Stone Age, right? Recent human history since the Industrial Revolution. Because now we're solving things like energy. We're solving the energy problem now. Right? It's been tried for years, but it's finally happening. We're solving cancer, not in the next 10 years, but gene therapy. I mean, we're looking at nanotechnology. It's mind-blowing, the stuff that's happening. We have artificial intelligence. Right? Machines that copy humans. That's already in every product you're using today, from Google Maps to Gmail, is artificial intelligence. Right? We have all these things happening today that will change us forever. And most of these are actually largely positive. They have quite a few unintended consequences, as you may imagine, like addiction, loss of privacy, things like that. But by and large, we have entirely new opportunities. Right, so when you look at speed, I'll give you two examples. One example, the cost of launching a new startup. Right? You see that cost here? That's when I started in 1997. We spent $8 million building a software system to distribute music on the internet. Today, it would cost you $80. Right? Literally. Right? Look at how it has shrunk, right? Open source, Amazon cloud system, developers start companies. And this is what you're up against if you're an incumbent. Right? If you have a company that's currently on the market, somebody invents a software and boom, everything is different. Any hotel companies here or travel companies? Yeah. Airbnb came out of nowhere. Now, I'll show you a slide on this later. 1,140 places to rent on Mykonos through Airbnb. Right? And where did they come from? Right? From a developer, from a tech guy. I tell you what, when the Africans come online and the Indians more, and all the Chinese, they're all coming from there, right? To reinvent how we do stuff. The companies now that are the new companies coming to market now, that are billion-dollar companies, Airbnb, Dropbox, Xiaomi, Palantir, Yingdong, Zalando, and so on, right? Billion-dollar companies in 3 years. So that's something we have to think about when we think about speed. Now, this slide alone is kind of enough to give you the fear of God, because there's so many geeky things in here. Right? I mean, I showed this slide to my wife, who's not a geek, thank God. She's not a futurist. She was like saying, okay, I stop right here at internet, social, mobile, cloud. Right? That's it. Right? I show it to my kids, and they're like cloud, big data, 3D printing. Right? But you see all that stuff over here? Smart cities, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, logistics, internet. This is all the stuff this technology is bringing to us in the next 5 to 8 years. I mean, if you put the Greek flag here, as I have allowed myself to do, there's amazing opportunities. Reinventing logistics. I mean, Greece is big in shipping. Why not reinvent logistics? Robotic ships already in development. You'll be surprised. Tourism, big data. We'll have some slides on this later. But if you're looking at all of this stuff, I mean, this is, McKinsey calls this $11.3 trillion economy in 5 years. That's built on these new things that are happening. Yes, there's many problems here. Privacy, data protection, abuse. But Mark Andreessen, the founder of Netscape, said, 2011, he said, software is eating the world. Everything that we used to have in hardware is becoming software. Right? So the CD has become software. The DVD on the movie theater has become software. The bank has become software. Right? Mobile, not all of it, but some of it. Right? The health records, doctors are becoming software at this very moment. I have some examples. Right? So there's a mind-boggling amount of change coming our way here. And as a reminder, You should read this book called Exponential Organizations. It's not from me, but it's still good. It's a friend of mine, Yuri van Geest, who wrote this, outlining what is happening here. And this curve really shows something, right? Humans are linear. We go like this. Technology is exponential. And guess what? Are you going to be exponential in 2 years just because you use Twitter or Facebook or a mobile phone? Right? Impossible. That's a human limit. We will not be able to do what IBM Watson does in the hospital, for example. Like now, IBM Watson is rolling out in hospitals as the doctor goes around to talk to patients. The system is right next to him on a movable device, right? And it gives them an update in real time of about 150,000 other cases of the same patient, right? In real time, right on the screen. So this, right? Multitasking, unless you're 15, even then, we can't do it. Reduces productivity. That is because we're not a machine. In fact, it has been proven more than 50 hours of work a week is counterproductive. That's the other thing. I'm guilty myself, not really sticking to that. So, but I can attest to you, right? I have a big poster in my office saying, don't start doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. Because we're not exponential. Our job is not to beat computers at the jobs of computers. Our jobs is not to be machines in the future. Our jobs is to focus on the right brain. Right? Creativity, design, imagination, negotiation, all these things. And that is actually a very good thing. When we're looking at this future, speed, again, is mind-boggling. This is the BMW 3i, the electric car from BMW, following in the footsteps of this whole craziness about electric cars. That is going to be self-driving. This is the Google car. I've been in it, not this one, but the previous. Right? It totally drives itself. Right? There's no steering wheel here, right? You see? There's no wheel. And it will be a long time before this kind of car will drive in Athens, right? That is because it's extremely difficult to have a self-driving car with 100,000 real-time changes at the last moment. Right? It's impossible. But we will have lanes in cities where cars drive like they do to the airport now. Singapore has already ordered 150,000 self-driving cars that will drive in specialized lanes. So that's a future we're seeing here. This is the robot tanker. There is only 5% of the staff you need on a regular tanker on this tanker. It's being produced right now. Not in Greece, I don't think. So mind-boggling change is coming with speed, right? Exponential change. This is the tricorder, taken from the Star Trek movies, right? This device is being developed by this guy who is 16 years old. He's one of the contestants of the X Prize, called the X Prize, right? This 16-year-old kid is inventing a system that can remotely diagnose patients better than a team of 10 doctors. That's the mission. If you're a doctor, you would say you're full of shit, right? That's just, and maybe that's true. But this system, you can cough into it, you can measure your pulse, you can prick your finger, you can go into the database, you can take all of the social media data, and you can make an image of what the problem is, whether you have stress or whether it's physical or whatever. Right? This will be on the market in less than 2 years. Supposed to cost $200. So your grandmother, 95 years old, living on an island, she can use that device to transmit whether she is okay or not, or whether she has to see a doctor or not. Right? Mind-boggling. So technology is basically doing this, right? I mean, especially when you're into this, you realize the power you have as a consumer is mind-boggling. Right? So when you're in a restaurant, you put a TripAdvisor app on the table. You make sure the waitress sees that you have TripAdvisor ready to go. Right? You get better service. Right? This is just little things. For example, 10 years ago, the only people that had access to the database of travel, airline travel, were travel agents. Right? The Sabre system. That same system is now in 100 websites. I mean, the power that we have, it's a mind-boggling amount of power that we have. Now, basically, almost all Greek consumers, in parentheses, will be digital natives. Your customers. Whether you're in tourism or in banking, in 5 years, they will act like the 15-year-old acts today, even if they're 50. Hard to believe, right? When you think about what it will take. Software is eating the world. Remember the radio, times of radio, right? Who still listens to the radio? Let me see who listens to the radio in the car, yeah? Okay. You know what's happening on a worldwide scale? You can observe this. As soon as you have high-speed mobile internet on a flat rate, you connect your mobile to the car radio, radio's gone. Why would you listen to radio with the unless you like the people in the radio, which happens, right? Or you want the news or the traffic, right? But traffic you can get through the app, news you can get through podcasts, and music you can get through Spotify, as long as the internet works. Right? So guess what happens here? No more hardware, all this. And this is killing off a lot of companies, right? I mean, radio companies, there are quite a few of them. Right? The same goes for publishers, record labels. The other thing is that technology is becoming invisible, right? So this idea of a mainframe computer, and then this big box, and the laptop, and the tablet, and now the mobile, the future is this device is connected to us directly. You know, Apple Watch, have you tried the Apple Watch? Pretty cool, but I don't know if I want to get one. It seems very addictive, you know, the whole time going like this the whole time. And then, of course, on your iris, you can wear a contact lens that connects to the internet. That's already easily possible. You just have to spend the money. Right? Holograms, projections onto your iris, implants. Right? We're 5 years away from getting a Wikipedia implant. So if you're a futurist or a professor, you have an implant where you can call up the database through a direct interface. It sounds like science fiction, but it's here.
Look around. Technology is all around us. We use it in every aspect of our lives. It enables us to do amazing things. But what if we could go further? What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This.
Somebody from Microsoft here? Where's the Microsoft person? The sponsor didn't show up. Okay, I get it. All right. So this is a product called Microsoft HoloLens. Huh? And what it does, it takes real-time data feeds and video feeds and audio feeds. You put a little visor on where you see information on top, like Google Glass, but better. Right? And you can see all that stuff. You can, if you're doing a repair, then you can see how that works. And let me continue playing it here for a while because. So basically, as you do that, in this whole environment, you become connected to a virtual flow of information. For example, for doctors, lawyers, policemen, firemen, trade shows, check in at the supermarket, and the story goes on. Socially speaking, we probably wouldn't do that socially in a restaurant or so, but imagine the amount of information, and this will be the new normal in 5 years. It's mind-boggling when you think about the possibilities here. And then again, this is a typical term I use a lot. In America, they call this hell-ven, hell and heaven. You can imagine easily that this could be heaven. For example, if a policeman wears this, right? You could get all the information in real time about who you're stopping. But what if there's a mistake in the database, right? And then you're the subject of this and something goes wrong because the policeman knows too much about you and is wrong. That could be hell, right? So it gets very complicated there. But this is the reality, right? The reality we're facing right now. We're moving from the physical realm into the digital pretty much on every part of our lives. And I'm not saying that's all a good thing. In fact, I'm saying sometimes it's better not to do that. And I'll have some slides on that too. But basically, technology should be improved and should do this, but humans should not become technology. And if you ask Americans, they're actually saying, many Americans are saying, that's fine if we become technology. Many people I talk to in America, they say, the first thing, if I can connect my brain to the internet, I'm doing it immediately. Right? In Germany, they're saying, oh God, no, why? Right? So it's a cultural thing also. But this is really something that's happening pretty much across the board. Here we have a robot. I'm going to start this again. A robot that has just started its business in Japan that greets you at the door.
A lifelike android robot called Aiko Chihira marked her first day at work as a receptionist at Mitsukoshi Nihonbashi department store in Tokyo on Monday, greeting customers as they walked in.
Yeah, it's a good comment here on the stream. You get this point, and this is, of course, in Japan. Anything is possible there, but it's actually going into a lot of shops. And in Japan, you have people who have electronic pets. Right? You have dogs that are actually robots. So. I had one, it didn't perform, so I got rid of it. There's a great question here saying, I'm focusing on technology. Actually, I'm not. I'm showing you what's happening in technology, but I think ultimately technology is going to be a means of business for us. Right? Efficiency, optimization, personalization, new business models, clearly that is a means of business. Ultimately, however, once we're all efficient in 10 years, it's not just all about technology, right? It's also about humanity. This is what I'm trying to say with all these things. Ultimately, we need a business model for both of these things. We're looking at this pyramid here from IBM, which is really very interesting. It's called the DIKW pyramid, and it's basically saying that what's happening in the near future is that we have lots of data being generated, information, and what used to be called the knowledge economy. Right? But the future of us is on the very top of this pyramid. Right? Is wisdom and intelligence. Because, you guessed correctly, computers, robots, smart software, technology will cover that entire lower period. The knowledge economy, you knowing lots of things or being able to do automatic, repetitive things, having information, is no longer a real competitive advantage, only for a short time. What do you do with the information? Which decisions you make? Do you find a creative way out? Can you come up with a solution? Can you design something? Right? That's this part of the pyramid. So going back to the question I got on the system here, next 5 years you can make lots of money here. Right? Because it's still very new. Right? After that, we have to move up the pyramid with a different kind of service. Create lots of great opportunities. So basically, we're looking at this tidal wave. And I call this all the Asians because they end with Asian, right? Digitization, automation, optimization, disintermediation, which means the middleman being removed, for example, in publishing, virtualization, and robotization. Right? If you're in the tech business, of course, you say, well, this is great, I have lots of work to do. Right? But what if you're a tourism company, an airline, an equipment maker, a software company, right? A government? And these are very large cultural changes. Right? I'll show you another thing that's happening here, of course, is I think this is really a huge opportunity by and large. It's not without a threat, really. But if you're looking at this curve, this is where it starts first, automation. Okay? For example, automation of financial industries. Do we really need a financial advisor to calculate the value of a property? In the future, of course, software is already doing this, right? Now there's a hedge fund that has invested $120 million in creating artificial intelligence to forecast which hedge funds they should invest in and which investment they should make by machine, right, by an algorithm. I mean, automation, for example, in warehouses, in robots. Right? I mean, basically, there's a robot called Baxter that now costs $27,000, and they have a back order of 1.2 million of the robots to be used in China and India to replace people. And that robot will be $2,000 in the near future. Intelligence. Basically, all companies are now becoming intelligent using what's called big data to actually predict market behavior, to use technology to improve the service. Beyond that, this whole overlap of humans and machines. So there's actually three opportunities here, right? There is one that does this and this, right? And then to combine the two in the long future. There's three opportunities, or four at least.
All of the problems of the world could be settled easily if men were only willing to think.
all of the problems of the world.
All of the inefficiencies.
Complexity.
Bad information.
Bad decisions.
Could be settled easily.
All of the opportunities could be realized.
If we were only willing
to see patterns in data that we could never see before.
Put analytics in our hands.
Reinvent businesses in the cloud.
Fight cybercrime with math.
Design a machine that thinks like we do.
if we were only willing
to use data
and science.
Interesting, right? This video from IBM again says if we were only willing to use technology, right? Answer is we could solve all the problems. This is the question goes back to the original question I got here. I don't believe this is true. Right? However, there is a lot of business in the part of using technology to be more efficient, right? I want to know from you right now, take out your weapons, your mobile devices, please. I'm going to activate the poll. If you don't vote, I will see it. And I will not let you get away. Okay, I have to switch this on first. Just give me 1 second. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Are you seeing this? Yeah. Futurediscussion.com is the web address. You could do it on a mobile. You have one choice. Okay. Simple question. Does technology hold the answer to most of society's challenges and problems? I'm not talking about just Greece here, right? The address is here, polyev.com/futuristgerd, or you can go to the shortcut, same place, futurediscussion.com. All you have to do, don't log in, don't register, just push the button. You getting it? Yeah? Futurediscussion.com. Okay? Well, we've got over 140 people here. If I only see 45 responses, then you're not a native, that's for sure. Or you've lost your smartphone. Or you can't go online, which is a distinct possibility here. Is it working, yes? You seeing it? Okay. I swear I will not use this information against you. Okay, futurediscussion.com. Yeah, it seems to be working for some of them. All right, I will leave this running. You can keep voting while we go to the next one, okay? Of course, while we have the poll up, right? So the questions are blocked now until we go back to this, right? So basically what we have here is an interesting result. Technology has amazing potential, but let's not forget about culture, politics, society. 2 weeks ago, I was in San Francisco. Right? I did a very similar poll. It was almost entirely on the top. That's to show you the cultural difference. I think this is a very optimistic outcome from my point of view, right? If I did this in Switzerland, which I did a couple of weeks ago, a similar poll, it was the lower part of the pyramid. It's a very interesting outcome. I think I will publish this later on the slide so you can see it, right? We'll go back to so we head into the second part, right? The question really is, this is a huge issue with technology, right? It's been referred to as machine thinking, right? That basically everything we do becomes a machine. Right? We marry the right person based on DNA analysis. We go to the right restaurant based on TripAdvisor. We go to the right location because somebody else has bookmarked it on Facebook, and so on and so on, right? So that is a distinct challenge, and I think this question also came up here in the survey earlier, is that this is a huge opportunity to infuse ethics into technology. Because you may be aware of the fact that robots and technology does not have ethics, right? Robots don't have morals, and neither does software. But our entire human history works based on ethics and values, not religion, but just ethics and values. Right? So that's definitely a thing that we have to tackle. The Internet of Things is the next big thing. Right? The Internet of Things is essentially connecting devices like cars, wristwatches, suits, pipelines, environmental monitoring, farms, right? Everything to the Internet. Currently, we already have over 60 billion connected devices. Monitoring, for example, airline engines, traffic lights, and so on. All traffic lights in Los Angeles are connected to save energy. In the future, we may have several 100 billion devices in the next couple of years. I'll show you a short trailer on this.
With the advent and proliferation of mobile devices, the way how we access the internet has also changed. The number of electronic devices that can be connected to network services has increased dramatically. But internet connectivity is also possible beyond these devices. Every object around us may be connected, collecting, processing, and sharing information. The Internet of Things opens up a new world of infinite possibilities. Can you imagine using running shoes that are able to upload to a website the time, distance, speed, and calories burned during the activity? And what about this information being stored on the internet to track your progress?
Yeah, you think it was crazy, the fact that we're connecting to look at Facebook or book stuff online or pay somebody through the mobile. Now we're actually connecting to shoes, running shoes, or outfits, or whatever. I mean, looking at this, if you're in the business of technology or of software, right, operational efficiency will be vastly increased. Logistics, for example, if you use this technology to connect all of the products you're shipping, you can save between 40 and 50% of all the shipping expenses for logistics. Right? I mean, Unilever is looking at this and saying clearly, if we could do that, right, that would be literally hundreds of billions. Customer service, the same idea. I mean, this is basically, if you're looking at the graphs, right, how many devices are being connected, great opportunity, I think, in many ways, to consider what that means in the future. As a reminder, of course, we won't have anything good from the Internet of Things if we have no security. So there's also a great business in security and standards and rules, for this kind of world, because ultimately, without that, for example, controlling your thermostat through the Internet. In California, we already have, I think, 18 million people controlling their heating through an app. So when they drive home, they turn on the air conditioner rather than it running all day long. They use an app to control the heating system. And you can save huge amounts of energy there. So this will be mission critical to have that in place. IBM has the IBM Watson initiative. You may have heard about Kasparov and, of course, IBM winning in chess, which is actually pretty easy for a computer, right? Because it's based on rules and simple rules. Now you have the IBM Watson gearing up, IBM investing serious money into basically bringing the Watson capabilities, which is a giant mainframe computer, or used to be, a giant computer network, for example, in this to where you have online customer support. For example, there's 100 million people work in call centers. In 5 years, it'll be 5 million. Because the software can replace a large amount of people using smart technology like this. And this is not always a good news, of course, but the same goes for customer behavior analysts. If you go on YouTube and you put in IBM Watson Analytics, you can see some pretty mind-boggling things that are happening there. Right? So that's just an example of what's happening across the board here in digital transformation. Another good example is a former client of mine, the New York Times. And this is a great example for if you have a current business you're going into the future. Right? The New York Times has decided in their wisdom that their content was worth people paying for it, which I agree. Yes, it is. But a subscription to the New York Times online will cost you $350 a year. The biggest newspaper in the world decided that you cannot read the newspaper online unless you sooner or later sign up, right? So they have this thing called the paywall, right? I'm sure you've been there. You read the New York Times, you click through a few times and it says, you've reached your 10 out of 10 free articles, right? Very annoying. So your positive feeling about the New York Times gets squashed by the fact that you have to pay $300 before you can read the article, right? Who does this? Okay. Well, it turns out they tried really hard. They got 1 million subscribers. 1 million. And they don't all pay $350. But this is the most important newspaper in the world, with the biggest writers, with the biggest reach, the biggest destination, the biggest brand, gets 1 million users, right? In Greece, if you put this in comparison, it would be 5,000. Right? So now they're going backwards. They assume that they can force people to pay. That was the assumption. We're forced to get money from people, right? So this kind of traditional assumptions is no longer useful. Because what happened to the New York Times? Here's the green bar is subscriptions, right? That's a new thing. And they dropped it again now. They're changing the whole thing. But look at the red bar. You know what the red bar is? Advertising. People stopped going to the New York Times because they knew they were always going to be asked to pay. And so advertising went kaput, right? Gone. right? And it's even further down. So this hardly makes any sense. When you're thinking about the digital transformation, you have to think about what the digital user wants. Right? And lots of companies like BuzzFeed, the Huffington Post, The Guardian, The Economist, The Atlantic, right, that are very successful with this. So that's something to think about this transformation. I worked in the music business for a while. That's another great example. Right? The worst thing you can do when you think about how things are changing in the future is to talk with yesterday's logic. Well, of course, we all use yesterday's logic because that's what we know. Right? When I worked for the music companies, for Sony and EMI and many others, to help them with the future, they said the most important thing is we cannot allow people to get music for free. Because if they get music for free, they won't pay. Turns out, completely wrong thinking. Because what people wanted is a better way, a quicker way, and a cheaper way, right, that they weren't willing to provide. So this is what happened, right? CD sales, that's the red line here, right? That is actually, news numbers are almost zero by 2020. We're talking about $28 billion industry. So now what do you do when you listen to music? YouTube, Spotify, Deezer, 1,000 other websites, online radio, right? Digital streams in the cloud. So this is a good lesson, right? Here, they could have known what is coming. Instead, they have still waited and waited and waited, right, to give permission for this. And now in this model, guess who is the new music companies? Right? It's not EMI, Warner, or Sony. It's Google, YouTube, Deezer, Spotify, Baidu. Right? They're toast. So that's a great lesson for us to learn. Yesterday's logic you have to review. Whether you make elevators or whatever it is, right? What has worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow because the context has changed, right? People want different things, right? How is your business contestable? If you haven't tried Airbnb, you should, right? I've had many bad experiences, by the way, also, so it's not always perfect, right? But Airbnb allows you to book a room or a penthouse or a castle, if you want, right, through somebody else, like eBay, who has it available, not through a hotel. It's mind-boggling what happened with Airbnb in a very short time. When I go on trips with my family and my friends, and even for future seminars, we rent from Airbnb. And I mean, I'm a passionate user of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, which I also help in some work, and other hotels. That's different. But here you see, for example, Mykonos, right? Looked it up this morning. It says 1,000 plus. It's actually 1,160 rentals. And look at all the places where you can rent stuff. Right? I mean, if you're in the hotel business, it puts the fear of God into you, right? These people are going to stay with each other rather than with us. That's an insult. And they don't pay any taxes. They don't have any requirements to the tourist board. They don't take the tourist tax. They don't actually keep up any buildings. They don't pay the right. I mean, it's mad, right? But if your business is digitally contested, you have to do something. Whether you're in banking, right? I mean, look at this, what happens here. Already the valuation of Airbnb is twice as much as the Hilton hotel chain. Whether it will stay that way, that's kind of doubtful, but obviously that, you know, in London and Paris, you can find an Airbnb on every block of the city. Banking. Going back to what I said here, right? I mean, if you're a bank, you must realize that the new consumers, the digital natives, are now going forward and saying, you know, I can use my mobile for banking. I'm not going to pay $20 to send money to my friend in America from here. I've switched a long time ago with Credit Suisse, where I'm a customer, to use them for any wire transfers. It takes 4 days and costs $40. Now I use a service called TransferWise. Costs $1, takes 4 hours. And there are predictions saying that the low-hanging fruit, like transactions, sending money, and even small loans and stuff, 40% of banking in Western countries could be taken away by startups. Not yet, because, you know, in our age, you don't really switch to a mobile phone with banking, you know, but the younger customers do, right? I mean, if you see this, what happened in Facebook, you're aware that Facebook now allows people to send money, right? This is just launched in America. So Facebook, 1.3 billion users. Facebook is now allowing all of the American users to send money for free through Facebook. It's going online in 4 weeks. Imagine what happens when a billion people can send money up to $500 in 1 second for free through Facebook. That will cut off all of the internal transactions of banking, even the ones that are free. Banks are responding, clearly. Lots of banks have invested in this now themselves, not in Facebook, but in similar mechanisms. All of these companies, Lending Club, right? Lending Club last year put out $2.8 billion in loans from people to people. I can invest money in somebody else's idea on Lending Club. Private, peer-to-peer money. I mean, clearly, this idea of banking, where the customer is kind of locked up, can't do anything, that's going away. Huh? Bill Gates said this 12 years ago. Banking is essential, banks are not. And I don't agree, actually. I think we do need banks, but they're going to have to be a lot better. They're going to have to really get with the program, just like the record labels. We need publishers, we need record labels, but we need them in new functions. They're not superfluous, but the low-hanging fruit is gone. So that's really the end of managed dissatisfaction. People are dissatisfied with banks. Right? I have one more point, and then we'll take a short break. The last point is this one. We're going to have to think about what we do as an arena, not as an industry. So if you're in the business of software, if you're in the business of tourism, or other small, medium-sized enterprises, you have to think about what's right next to you, right? Lateral thinking. And this is really an opportunity for the future. And we're looking at, for example, Tesla, right? Tesla just published the patents for the batteries. And it turns out now Tesla is launching in a very short time, I think in a week, is launching a consumer battery based on an entirely new technology. So Tesla says the most important thing about the electric car is the battery. So why, if we have good batteries, why don't we offer batteries to other companies that are not cars, right next to the current business? Arena thinking. Google, same thing. Google launched 4 days ago, called Google Project Fi, F-I, where you can have roaming in 125 countries with a mobile phone number that's in the cloud. Google has become a telecom company a week ago. And why do they do that? Not because they want to make money with telecom, because every person that goes online on the mobile phone is a Google customer. So ask yourself a simple question. When you're looking at your industry, your company, what is right next to what you are doing? What is the arena? What is the arena of what you're doing? There's a great book about this called The End of Competitive Advantage. I'll leave you with this image for the break. Right? This is the mission. We don't want to compete for a smaller pie. We want to build a larger pie. This is a pie, by the way, if you haven't recognized it. The biggest pie in the world, Guinness Book of Records. Right? It's about building a larger pie. Right? Digital transformation, arena thinking, exponential thinking. And that pie is the future. Right? I think for us, to think about what that could be is crucial. To discover that. And to see how we get from the small cake to a larger pie. I grant you this is a difficult job right now. It's kind of schizophrenic, right? Because you're worried about the present. You have lots of present concerns, and then at the same time you're supposed to think about 2020. It gives you a headache, right? But this is the mission. And I find a lot when I work with CEOs, I do a lot of CEO coaching, that they're so obsessed with the current message, right? It's very hard to think about what is beyond the obvious. So it's kind of a dualistic approach to how we do things. So it's time for a break. Right? The wheels are spinning, I'm sure. In the next session, we're going to summarize a little bit and come down to some practical conclusions. I will leave up the survey. I switched it back to the questions, so keep asking questions, and we'll get to that shortly. Thanks very much.